Makes a huge difference if you'll do me a favor by subscribing and liking the podcast wherever you listen. It goes a long way. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy. Brad Beeler retired after 25 years with the United States Secret Service, bringing a wealth of experience from his distinguished career. In his final position as an instructor and liaison at the National Center for Credibility Assessment, he trained thousands of federal law enforcement and intelligence agents in credibility assessment and elicitation techniques. He's also served on the protection detail for former President George H.W. Bush and various foreign heads of state. As a federal polygraph examiner for 17 years, he secured numerous confessions in high-profile investigations and conducted the most criminal polygraph examinations in the agency's history. With a master's degree in criminology, he was honored as the U.S. Secret Service Special Agent of the Year for combating crimes against children. Recognized globally as a communications expert, Brad has delivered sought-after presentations to law enforcement and intelligence agencies worldwide. His upcoming book, Tell Me Everything, which comes out in 2026, a Secret Service agent's proven strategies for earning trust, revealing the truth, and communicating anyone. We have a conversation about his life, how he got into the Secret Service, life lessons in communication learned from the interrogation room to the real world, and how he trains people and mentors that have influenced his life, and life lessons that you can take and apply in all types of settings, in the work setting, at home, and help you be a better, stronger communicator and connect with people. Thanks. I hope you enjoy. All right, Brad, welcome to the Wisdom of Life.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I want to start back with high school for you. I heard on another podcast that you had an English teacher who was also drama teacher and lots of things. And what type of impact did she have on you?
Yeah, amazing individual, Miss Bertrand. And she was just such a teacher. I'm sure we've all had teachers in our lives, Chad, that somebody that just really connected with us. And you just saw her drive and her want to have her students succeed. She was dealing with horrific rheumatoid arthritis for probably the last 20 years of her teaching career. But yet every day she came in, she put a smile on her face. And she was, in addition to the English teacher, she was also the drama coach. And I never thought of myself, I was a real introverted kid. And she got me involved in drama and especially improvisational acting. And I will tell you, without a doubt, that was one of the best things as far as increasing my ability to communicate, is having a partner that you can do yes and games with and go right brain. And it really opens up communication. It's something that we definitely don't do today in our communications, where we go to ChatGPT to get the perfect response, or we send asynchronous texts back to one another and send emojis. So that was great for me as far as being able to think in the moment. And I owe that all to Miss Bertrand.
How did she convince you, with you being introverted, how did she convince you to participate in that?
Well, at first it was, we had a debate team as well. And I think she saw that during some of the debate stuff that I had a little bit of a quick wit. Like, I was kind of timid. I didn't have, that I didn't stick my chest out and be confident. But I think she could see that I was kind of thinking in the moment. And I think she thought, hey, I've actually got an opening here, and I think you'd be good for it. And a little bit of convincing, and a couple of my friends and maybe an attractive female was on the team. So being a 17-year-old kid, of course, that's what I'll do. Yeah, I'll do speech team, but it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about some of those lessons you learned at that age, how have those helped you throughout your career? Like, if they have, right? Like, if they've carried forward.
Yeah, the right brain part, 100%. And it's something I still do with my students. So for the last 15 years, when I teach investigative interviewing, what I'll do is when we're teaching interrogation, when we're teaching in whatever capacity, I will give my students a word of the day or a music lyric or something that they have to weave in to their communications. And it really helps people. Like, say, for instance, here at Fort Jackson, when I was teaching at the Federal Polygraph School, we would do our polygraphs with basic trainees. So they were going through their 10-week basic training for the Army. And they would come over for the day to come to the polygraph school. So we always kind of found it fun to tell them, hey, these FBI students, Secret Service students, DEA students, they're going to be trying to get some words in on you over the next 2 hours. Pick up on it. Don't let them trick you. And if you catch the word, we'll make the special agent do push-ups or whatever. Well, if you're an 18-year-old soldier in basic training, you're like, oh, this is great, right? Because they've been smoked for the last 8 or 9 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I would give them the words of the day. And one time I remember I had an FBI agent and she was very focused. She was a really good investigator, but she was very black and white. So what I did is before she went into the room with the soldier, I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get in the words General Shalikashvili, Burkina Faso, three-toed Madagascaran tree sloth, salve, and Medal of Honor. And she's like losing her mind. She's like, there's no way. This is ridiculous. You're playing these reindeer games. And I said, by the way, introduce yourself like Keanu Reeves in Point Break, where you say, I am an FBI agent.
Oh my God.
And she, once again, she was like, this is ridiculous. Well, I'll be darned if she didn't walk in. And when she introduced herself to the soldier, she said, hi, I'm Special Agent Johnson. I am an FBI agent. And I know you just met Agent Beeler. He's a very humble guy. He just actually got back from Burkina Faso. You may have heard about it, where he was taking care of General Shalikashvili. And on that protective assignment, there was the last breeding pair of the Madagascaran tree sloth was crossing the road. And in his quick reaction time, he was able to swerve the limo out of the way and not kill the animal. Unfortunately, it did get a wound, but being an EMT, he was able to put salve on it and was actually able to survive, get the animal to survive. Once again, the last breeding pair. And as a result, the president gave him the Medal of Honor. And she said it so convincingly that the soldier looked at her and said, I heard about that. And I was locked in at that moment. I'm like, you know what? That is a hidden talent. That's what Miss Bertrand did for me, is she pulled that out of me. And what I saw, that was the best polygraph she ran the entire time I saw her, was because she was thinking outside the box, 100%.
Yeah. And did it also like have some sort of relaxation effect for her? Like where she wasn't so stiff or something?
Yeah, and that's what happens a lot of times, Chad, is that people, before they do a big speech or before they do a keynote, or you hear people do this when they do TED Talks, is they get so wrapped up in what they're going to say, right? That horizon is always constantly there for them, and it's a problem. Instead of just freelancing and instead of doing improv, and when people do improv, they realize that whatever situation they get themselves into, they can get themselves out of. And when you have that kind of freedom, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's very similar to that. And when you get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's because I don't mind putting myself in a bad position because I'm now comfortable being uncomfortable. And once you start being comfortable being uncomfortable, you don't want to stay there, but you realize I'm going to find my way out of this. And I think once people get off those little yellow sticky notes and once they just start talking, they really pull back some layers of that onion that they didn't think that they had within themselves. And it really gives you a little bit of confidence where you start peacocking a little bit.
Yeah, and it's accessing their creative intelligence, right?
Yeah, and you're also connecting certain neural pathways, right? So if I start using metaphors, I start connecting analogies, I start being able to think in the moment, those synapses are firing so much quicker because we've got a 25,000 on average word vocabulary. So it's about being able in the moment to pull those words together. That's why, like, if you look at good interrogation is almost like freestyle rap. It's almost like jazz, where I can kind of take one thing and then move, and then based upon their reaction, both body language and verbal, I can spit something else. There's a lot of similarities between rap and jazz to good communication as far as debate, those types of things. You see a lot of debaters, and I'm sure you've seen this, Chad, where you get really smart people on the debate stage at a presidential election, and what carries the day, right? The quick wit, the one-liner, the person in the moment that can see an opportunity, that's many times the person that wins the debate, not the person that is completely factual.
Yeah. So when you like taking that person or taking the interrogation, what are you looking for? Or like, what is that, in that political debate, like, what are they looking for to have that ideal timing, that environment, that it's like things are syncing up so they're able to take advantage of that moment?
Sometimes it's just the moment. There's certain people that can just sense the moment. once again, they are observing. And what I mean by that is, so my best friend's deaf. And for 35 years, I've had to look him in the eyes to see if he's understanding what I'm saying. And he's had to look into my eyes, and I've had to look at his body language, and he's had to look at my body language. And we have to stay in the moment. Too many times people are thinking about what was just said or what do they want to say, and they don't stay in the moment. And I'm sure you've probably felt that way, Chad, is that, oh, I really want to get that point in, right? But you missed it. That was a fleeting moment. You had a great comeback, or you had a great, something you wanted to push, but that moment has passed. So let that moment go and stay in the moment. Observe, watch the body language. And I think a lot of times the people that are really good at this, they can see that wounded animal, okay, from a body language standpoint, where they can see the voice, they can see, man, the timing is perfect on this for that zinger or for that comeback for that certain point. So I think a lot of it is, there is a nature versus nurture. There are certain people that are better at this than others, but it's a muscle like any other muscle that can be trained. But where we see today is people don't do this, right? We sit there and we pick up this supercomputer in our hand, and we just sit there and look down and we send it, and then we wait for it to get received, and then it gets sent back to us, and then we wait. We're not in the moment. So I've never sent an emoji. I think they're shortcut. It takes us back to caveman days. We've gone from Shakespeare back to caveman days. We've regressed because we're doing this shorthand. We don't look at people and talk to people anymore. So I think the best way you get good at communication is do it. It's just like jiu-jitsu. The best way you get good at jiu-jitsu is not reading it in a book, but getting on the mats and doing it.
Yeah, getting choked out.
Getting choked out. That's the best lesson. I mean, here's the beauty. It's interesting you say that, Chad, because I wish everything in life could evolve like jiu-jitsu, in that this is the 100th year anniversary of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And the things that worked, when you look at the textbook in 1925, the things that worked then still work today. And the things that have been invented that don't work, don't get taught. They don't get carried on. But it's a crucible where I can try something and I can see in real time that didn't work. Or that did work. And then I'll try it on somebody else and that did work. And then over that brief time where I'm trying something out, I can see this is something I'm going to now put in the toolbox. There's very few things in life, whether it be interviewing, whether it be in business, where you could test something out in such a real world environment where literally you can almost go to 100%, where you almost broke my arm, you almost choked me out. I'm going to tap. And now we start over and we smile and we learn from it. So I wish more things could be tested out the way we test things out in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was fortunate years ago to practice Japanese jiu-jitsu. And so my boss, who was a college tennis coach, was a 3rd degree black belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu. So we used to do with the guys on the team and go around doing self-defense classes. And he would always be like, "Hey, Chad, you're my uke. Like, you're my rag doll."
Right.
I'm gonna
that's not
do
good.
this.
Not good.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was brutal. I'd be like, no, pick somebody else, John.
Yeah, that's not good. I have an instructor that's 3-time world champ, and for the last 10 years, I've been blessed to learn from him, but I've never, it's the great thing is there's so many levels to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Is that you think I've got this mastered, and then, oh no, I don't. And then the person that did that to you, there's people above him. So there's so many different levels to it. And the good thing is that I'm a brown belt, but the people that join up, the white belts, the blue belts, the purple belts, I can go against them, and then I can try things out that I never could try out against a black belt. So it just creates this great environment. And also it brings together people from all different shapes, all different sizes, all different worldviews, different political views. It gives me actually a little bit of hope about society, Chad, in that, a group like that with a shared focus can come from so many different backgrounds. We probably have 150 people in the gym, and they would be people where if I didn't have jiu-jitsu, I probably would never have met them, because we live in these echo chambers. But it's kind of like an echo chamber free zone on the mats, because you can talk all you want, but the mats don't lie, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really cool because it sounds like what you're experiencing there is an environment of humility, an environment of partnership, of working together, of teamwork, and an environment of learning, like growth.
Yeah, our professor Gibson Sa will basically say you win or you learn. There's no win and lose, right? Is that I learn a lot more from my losses, because you learn really quick, don't do that thing, right? It's kind of like putting your hand on the stove. Like, don't put your hand on the stove. It's hot. Okay, it's not a textbook. You see, wow, if I do that again, bad things will happen. I will lose my consciousness if I do that. So you learn workarounds. And it's the other great thing too, is you see people that you might have 100 pounds on them. You may be 10 years younger than them, or usually I'm older than most people I'm rolling against, but you just see it doesn't matter as much, is that it's the great equalizer. And people that have certain attributes, it's one of those rare things where skills can trump attributes in that situation.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think I'm curious, like, do you enjoy being like a student again? Because you're in, from a professional standpoint, you're the teacher, which obviously there's learning and student, but it's like you're the expert. Whereas in this environment, you're really that student. What's that like for you?
Yeah, I guess a little bit of both. So I will say, when I started my journey with jiu-jitsu, it was to deal with the emotional trauma of interrogating child sex offenders. And it was, somebody offered it up to me. They were going through some other issues, somebody that was going through some PTSD, an Army veteran. But they said, hey, I like jiu-jitsu. I know you deal with some traumatic things. It really helps me. And the one thing I learned is I had to be completely present. So if I had a bad case the night before where I had to really rationalize with somebody, a pedophile, it allowed me to be 100% focused on the mats, where for an hour and a half, 2 hours, I was not thinking about that bad thing. I was just focused about, being in the group. So yeah, I would say that was my motivation, but now I get to learn, but then I also do still get to teach, where I help teach one of the beginner classes. So I get a little bit of both, where the teacher can become the student and the student can also become the teacher. Is that I learn more from my students, both in jiu-jitsu and also in interrogation and interviewing, because some people that have no training, they do things that aren't in the textbook. And that's great. Okay. Is that they don't know what they don't know. So they'll say something. I'll be like, wow, that's fascinating. I never thought of it that way. And we play around with it, we integrate it, and it actually, some of the best themes that I would use, that I've learned and incorporated over the years have been from my students. And if I can give you an example real quick, Chad, is that
Yeah, please.
I had a TSA student who didn't know a lot about polygraph, didn't have a lot of experience. And one day I'm watching her, and she's doing this approach where before the polygraph, she's talking to the soldier, and she's like, hey, this polygraph, it's kind of like a magnetometer. And I don't want to try to imitate her voice, but she was still kind of figuring this out. But she goes, it's kind of like a magnetometer. She's like, look, if you don't get everything out of your pockets, it's going to go off. And then you got to go back through the magnetometer. And then we can't tell the difference between a paper clip and a gun. Okay. And she's like, it could just be a little paper clip. So let's just talk about it. Let's address it. Let's get it out so that you don't have any problems on the test. And I was kind of like, wow, everybody's been through a magnetometer, right? That's a good metaphor. It's a good analogy. So it's something that we teach now. And it was all from a brand new student that just stream of consciousness kind of spoke this into existence.
Yeah. Yeah. And coming from a different perspective, different background, different experience. And kudos to you all for seeing the value in that.
Yeah, is you have to leave your ego at the door. Is that too many people think, oh, I'm the first one that said this wise thing, or I'm the first person that came up. You're not, okay? Chances are.
Yeah.
In today's world, yeah, it might be the first recorded one, or you may have been the first to say it on a podcast, but you're probably not the first person that did it. So don't give yourself too much credit, all right? So yeah, you got to leave your ego at the door when it comes to these types of things.
Yeah, that's really neat. So I want to go back for a second, then we'll span forward. But so when you're doing speech and debate and you're in high school, and was law enforcement in the front of your mind, or a consideration / Secret Service? You're like, oh yes, I can see myself doing that. Or how did that come about for you?
Definitely law enforcement. It was one of those things where I played college soccer, and I got injured one year, and I did my 5th year, so my redshirt year, and it worked out pretty good because I was able to get my master's degree in criminology. So I was in that kind of arena, but that extra year allowed me to do an internship. And I looked around, and there were a couple of options, but I chose the Secret Service, and I did the Secret Service internship. And while I was there, President Clinton came in to town, and all the interns got to meet the president. And it was fascinating, obviously, to meet the president. But honestly, my focus was more on the Presidential Protective Division and the counter snipers and the counter assault team. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? And in talking to the agents and just seeing how morally sound these people were, how they took care of one another, all the travel they got to see and the things they got to do, the moments in history that they got to be part of, was pretty fascinating for me, and that's what led me to applying and ultimately working there for 25 years.
So did you apply right after that 5th year?
I did. It took about 2 years, the process. So I became a juvenile officer. So I handled, individuals in the juvenile justice system. So I did that for a while. It's a long process. There's multiple interviews. There's a polygraph, medical, all those things. So, and also the Pope was visiting St. Louis at that point. So all the Secret Service in St. Louis that were doing my background check and other things were obviously doing more important things, handling the advance for the Pope's visit to St. Louis. But it worked out great. I came on young, so I didn't know a lot, but I had a great training agent that was a 3rd generation Chicago cop who really taught me how to be safe on the streets and those types of things. So I was blessed to always have good mentors, both as an investigator with the Secret Service and then also in polygraph. So that was a blessing to me. And I'm just such a huge believer in not throwing people to the wolves and making sure they have the right people that don't try to change them, but get them to level up within their own personality and attributes.
What do you think that takes to help people, not trying to change them, but to help people level up with their natural talents and attributes? What do you think are the ingredients to be successful in that role?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best mentors that I had, I obviously looked up to because they were successful, but they also took time to see what I was bringing to the table, what I was good at. And okay, so he's good at this, this, and this. We don't need to work on this, but we definitely need to work on that. And they just didn't have a carbon copy on what they thought a good examiner was. Too many times people want to create a duplicate of themselves because, they've got that Dunning-Kruger, effect where I'm the best at everything. So you want to be just like me. And I think the best examiners that I've ever trained, I realized, wow, they're really good at this. Let me push them to that. There's obviously a standard, but you have to take a step back. You have to take almost a 20,000 foot view of what attributes they're bringing to the table and saying, where can we level them up? Okay. Because if they're at a 2 on this report writing, well, obviously I got to work on that, but don't make them try to be like you. And that's where I think a lot of people fall short is this is how I interrogate. This is how I interview. This is how I do everything. And you're going to do it exactly that way. I think in law enforcement, the best field training officers and the best mentors are ones that survey the lay of the land. They have that front sight focus and the sight picture in front of them metaphorically, but they don't try to change that person completely and make them a robot.
Do you think it's more of a focus on looking outside themselves, looking at the lay of the land, right? The landscape combined with, okay, this individual, how do we help this individual be successful? Rather than looking at themselves and going, okay, how do I boost my ego?
A lot of people do that. They think, you know what, I'm a mentor now and I get to show these people how to do these things. And that's unfortunate. I think those are the worst people to have. I think some of the best mentors are people that they don't want to be mentors, right? The people that want to be the training agent many, many times are the cadre. Those are the people you don't want to be the cadre. Some of the best supervisors are people that don't want to be supervisors, right? If you want powers, that's somebody you want in power, not necessarily. I think the best mentors I had were kind of those oh shucks people. And you got to look, let's say I talk about 140 words per minute, Chad. And, I'm Midwestern. I've got a pretty Midwestern draw. I'm going to have people that I'm training from New York speaking at 170 words per minute. And I'm going to have ones from Mississippi that are going to be talking about 45 words per minute. I can't make them into the same person. I can slightly nudge them in certain directions. But if I try to just make a carbon copy of me, one, I don't think that's good because when you're, and we've seen politicians do this when they go down south and they try to speak a certain way and do a cultural appropriation, and both sides of the aisle do it. It's fake. Yeah. So we're mammals and we see people across from us. When we realize people are fake to us, we almost get this curious, like, what are they selling me? What's the angle here? You have to be yourself. So let that person you're training be themselves and level up where we can. Okay. And like I said, I hate to keep going back to jujitsu, but there are certain people that are 6'5" that weigh 150 pounds that they're going to be amazing at guard retention. And then there's people like me that are more built like a caveman that those things aren't going to work. I'm going to try to smash and smother you. I'm a caveman. So somebody that is teaching me needs to show me things that don't require 15 different steps and flexibility and vice versa. So you have to sit there and take account of what's the person's attributes, how much time do I have to train him or her, and what's our end goal. And also realize your limitations. You can't change people overnight. It's going to take time.
Yeah. I think that's a really good universal leadership lesson, right? Is like that can be in the business world, that can be in the sport world, that can be in law enforcement, like anywhere, right? Is like thinking about it from the standpoint of what are the constraints and what is the objective and what's the time frame, right? Like, do we have a month? Do we have a year? Do we have all these factors come into play?
Yeah, and people are going to level up very, very quickly at first, right? And then we see this with our white belts in jiu-jitsu and with our polygraph examiners. Right when I get them in a mentorship or right when I start working with someone in jiu-jitsu in a beginner's class, you see them just exponentially. They're losing they're learning 5, 6, 7, 8 things. They're drinking through a fire hose. And then they get to a certain point where they reach that first plateau and they start learning less things. And then other people are going harder at them in the gym. And then we're putting them in other circumstances in the polygraph suite where those challenges and they get overwhelmed. And what they decide to do at that moment, I think, speaks volumes about how they become. In jiu-jitsu, many of them quit. They get their blue belt and they're like, I got this figured out. I don't want to try any harder. And in polygraph, we get that around the end of the mentorship where they've done 40 or 50 exams. And we're going to get a pretty good sense. Do they want to go to that next level or are they overwhelmed? And to me, that is the defining moment. It's not test one. It's 2 or 3 months down the road where we've given them an opportunity to get 2 or 3% better every day. Now let's take the blinders off and see where are they at holistically. Too many times we try to make just like we falsely make first impressions with people. Sometimes we try to make instant assessments about someone's potential and that they might have a bad day. Some people pick things up a little bit quicker than others.
At that point where they're going right or they're going left or they're getting off the road, going forward, however you want to spin it, Brad, but you want to take it is what are the cues? What are the indicators for the people that you've seen, like they keep going with the polygraph or jiu-jitsu and the ones that are like, no, okay, I'm not, I don't want to go to that next level. Have you noticed patterns?
Yeah, consistency. It's like anything else in the gym, in the mats, and then in polygraph. It's the consistency. It's the consistency to get better. Those habits, right? Like you will see people in polygraph when they want to get better, interviewing, they want to get better. They will have a notepad. They will have a journal, and they will tirelessly chart. What did I do wrong here? What did I do right here? What did I learn today? Right? And they may have had a bad day, but you can see they're grinding. They're trying to get 1% better every day. And it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu where I really see those people, they don't get mad, but they get disappointed at themselves when they don't get that right outcome. And they may jump on YouTube, which isn't always the best thing, or TikTok, but they're trying, they're staying immersed where they're trying to get better versus what we see a lot of times in polygraph or jiu-jitsu is instead of coming 3 times a week, now they start coming 2 times a week. Then it's 1 time a week. Then they skip a week. And then the next thing you know, they're gone. And it's the same thing with polygraph. If they're blaming the other person, man, he wasn't going to give it up. He wasn't going to say anything. They look at external factors for why things are happening poorly to them. And it's a victim mentality versus just these things are either happening to me because I'm not working hard enough. And that's when they turn it up. They turn up the intensity. They stay in the room for a longer period of time, or they prep before the interaction to get themselves in the best headspace to increase the best odds for them to have a positive outcome.
Yeah. Preparation, and it sounds like being a real student of the craft.
Preparation is everything. It truly is. Obviously with jiu-jitsu, there's not a ton of preparation that you're going to do, obviously, than staying in shape. But before a competition, they may be watching videos on their potential opponents, so on and so forth. But when it comes to communication, preparation is such an invaluable task because, for instance, if I was going to have a conversation with you, let's say an investigative interview, I would want to go to your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Instagram, and find out what makes you tick. Let's say, for instance, I was doing a search warrant on your house. If you were a criminal, I would want to see everything that was in your house. You're in Denver. Are you a Rockies fan? Are you an Avalanche fan? What are you into where I can have some touch points, some connections, some things that when I do start interacting with you, I now have some metaphors. I now have some analogies because just like Chad, the Instagram reel sucks you in based upon your previous likes, tips, the amount of time your finger hovered over a meme or whatever, just like that's curated and distilled to suck you in, so does my conversation preparation. I have to know those things so that when we do start talking, I can get those metaphorical likes, loves, and, so on and so forth, and not get those dislikes and those swipes metaphorically. I got to keep access to you, and I got to keep your eyes and your mind upon me so that you can take in my message. And that just could be that I'm trying to obtain the truth, meaning you're a victim. It could mean that you had nothing to do with the criminal act. But by knowing a lot about you, I make you feel comfortable with me. And I think you feel from your mind like, hey, he's going to get to the bottom of this because I've done my prep work. If you walked in and the surgeon was like, hey, what are we in here for?
Yeah.
What are we doing today? Right? I mean, who's this? John, Brad, Tom? You'd be like, whoa, get me out of here. Right? And so preparation is everything. And we walk into that dentist's office and stuff is screwed about, and you got the previous bloody gauze from the previous patient. That's not good. Right. I'm walking out of that dental shop.
That's right.
So preparation is very important.
Yeah. And you talk about harnessing all 5 senses, right? So that we can have better interactions, better communication, facilitate trust. How does the everyday person, how can the everyday person tap more into our 5 senses?
Yeah, that's a great point, Chad. And that basically, I want to look at when people say first impressions, I want to be very, very clear on that. When we talk first impressions, we're talking eyes and ears. These are the 2 senses that 200,000 years ago, when we were on the plains walking and we saw another tribe member, is this person going to help us or hurt us? And we're going to look at their face and their hands, and we're going to hear their voice. And if they have a high-pitched voice and they have a furrowed brow and they have a weapon or they have their fists, that's somebody that I need to distance myself from as quickly as possible. And those senses allow us to keep a distance, okay? That's a first impression. It happens in a second. It can be reevaluated, but that is the first impression. And we need to harness that. And that's a gut instinct. That's what a police officer uses when he walks up to a car at 2 a.m. And when the hair on the back of their neck stands up, you want to trust it. What a first impression a lot of times we think of is, oh, I went on a date and I got a first impression. You didn't get a first impression. You got multiple impressions using all your senses. Okay, you saw them. So, one thing that we can take care of with sight is our attire. During COVID, we really, really got very casual, right? A little too casual, right? So there's, enclothed cognition. I wore a suit for 25 years. And when I don't wear a suit, when I'm just wearing a polo today, it feels a little strange. All right. But, that's why drone pilots wear, flight outfits, because they need to practice like they play. They need to look how they play. So attire is very important. When I first meet you and you're assessing my face, I don't want to have contempt on my face. I don't want to have my furrowed brow. I want to give you a quick eyebrow flash. I maybe want to tilt my head off to the side to show my carotid. Those are friend signs. Obviously, a slight smile. I want you to see my hands. When you shake my hand, it is going to be a dry handshake because I put antiperspirant on my hands. All right. So you're never going to get a wet handshake from me. I will have sat on my hand if I was sitting down, or if I'm doing an interview, I'll have had a hand warmer on. So you're going to get a warm handshake. I'm all going to tilt it to the side at about a 1 o'clock position at my navel level, because it's not going to be too high, because that'd be viewed as a threat. You're going to always pronate typically because you're sitting down typing all day. So you're going to come in at 11 o'clock position. So I'm doing the work for you. And I'm not going to shake. I'm just going to hold that hand. So that is where touch comes into it, because now, oh, he's not nervous. He gave me a nice handshake. Where sound comes in, I'm going to deepen my tone just a little bit, because a higher pitch voice 200,000 years ago summoned, shoot, there's danger.
Yeah.
We didn't have 911 radios. That carried further into the fields and forests. So by slowing down, enunciating my words, and deepening my tone, I'm giving you a friend sign. By breaking bread with you and eating with you, I'm now bringing smell and I'm now bringing taste into the equation. So that is how true connection is made, is truly using all 5 senses. I can't tell you how many times I broke bread with people that may have been bad people, but if they're eating, it means their heart rate is at a certain level to where they can take in knowledge and they can provide knowledge. I'm providing them food. I'm going to get reciprocity. There's a lot to that. We talk around the dinner table. So I'm trying to, once again, create the right time, the right place. I'm trying to be the right person. I'm trying to create the right person that's more likely to exchange information with me in real time.
Yeah. So if they would be eating or drinking, you would reciprocate. You would.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, I had one case where I late at night ran up there. It was a really, really bad case in South Carolina here with involving a molester and his girlfriend. And I stopped at a gas station and got like 2 buffalo cheese rollers and a Bang Energy. So I had like 300 milligrams of caffeine and 2 buffalo cheese rollers. And I thought I was going to have some time to prepare for the interview. And I didn't. It was one of those things where, hey, we need you to talk to them right now. They're being held at the jail. And I'm like, well, what have they had to eat? Man, maybe a Hot Pocket. So I'm like, shoot, I'm gonna have to get them food. So I made it a point to reach in my wallet. I knew from their social media that one liked McDonald's and one liked Wendy's. So I said, hey, I was going to get some Wendy's. What can I get you? Well, I get $20 out of my wallet, give it to the detective. The detective brings food back. What does that do? That ingratiates them to me because I'm providing something for them. It obviously looks good in a courtroom situation because I'm providing them food and they appreciate it. But also the fact that he was eating lets me know that he's calm to a certain point because mammals won't eat typically when they're anxious or stressed. I mean, we've all experienced that where I just don't, my stomach's upset. So that was a good barometer for me. But problem was I had to eat a Big Mac and a large fry. And, so now that was on top of the 2 buffalo cheese rollers and the Bang Energy. And so got some good information from that interview. About 45 minutes later, it was now time to talk to the girlfriend. Well, from her social media, she liked Wendy's. So I pulled $20 out again and told the detective, I was going to get some Wendy's. Would you like some? Oh, yeah, I'd love a, Frosty and a supersized fries and an orange drink. Me too. And I got about halfway through that. It was a very, very bad gastrointestinal day. But on the jail call the next day, she was literally saying, they got me because they gave me McDonald's. They gave me McDonald's. That's how they got me. So providing things to people a lot of times gets things in return. That Cialdini principle of reciprocity is a real thing. And if done effectively, you can leverage that for your benefit.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite a story.
It was a good outcome.
Yeah.
But like I said, my stomach did not appreciate it. But, first impressions, in those situations are so important, but you got to be careful. And, depending on the demographics of your listeners, we just have to be careful about how people can weaponize that. Because if they know what you're into, they know your social media, they can create the hypothetical best version that would be most likely to connect with you. And we see this in a lot of romance scams. People put so much stuff online that I can, kind of a la carte, take this and take that and create a persona that's more likely to connect with someone. And as a result, some people get swindled and money taken, but sadly, worse things could happen. The Ted Bundys, those types of people in this world could come off extremely non-threatening, but also could come off as, oh, that's the love of my life, because we would jump to that conclusion.
Right. It's almost like these unconscious skills can become conscious and they can be used for good or evil, right? Like you can be used to develop positive rapport for, like you're saying, trying to prevent future crimes, or just in the everyday world of developing positive relationships in the business space and friendships and the likes. But there are people who can use them for ill.
Yeah, influence can be used negatively, right? I mean, I think the word influence sometimes has a negative connotation, just like interrogation has a negative connotation, but interrogate is just a question. Too many times people have a negative connotation to that because there are false confessions out there. It can happen. I mean, we can definitely go over that later, but it's kind of like a hammer. A hammer can be used to build things and it can also be used to demolish things. So people that negatively use social engineering and influence is a problem. And it's something that you have to be careful about that and identify it early when people are doing it to you. We see it with gaslighting. We see narcissists do a lot of these types of things, but also, traditionally car sales has changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years, but you would see that in the old school car sales with how they would use that literally from the moment you walked on the lot until you signed your commitment.
Exactly. You talk about and write about like how we can ask better questions. So you said interrogation is asking questions. How can we as people ask better questions when you think about that? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, first off, we need to make it about them, right? Too often we make it about us. I'm sure, you mentioned tennis, that you like to play tennis, Chad, and just to discuss this, how many times have you gotten a tennis conversation about somebody and they turn it about them? You'll say, where'd you play tennis? Oh, well, I played here, or I did this. And then it becomes about them, like if somebody ran a 5K, don't jump in and start talking about your 5K. Ask about it. Don't say, oh, well, I did a full Ironman. Yeah, look at me, right? Let them bathe in the glory of whatever they're telling you. Ask questions about it. Because you're good on the topic, you're going to know a lot of informative things about it. You're going to be like, oh, what are your training splits? How many days a week do you run? What kind of shoes are you? Brooks, New Balance? What are you doing? What kind of goo are you using? Are you, what are you doing post run? They're going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, so you run too. Then you can answer their questions instead of just making statements about yourself. And I think, I have an acronym called FEEL. It's Family, Education, Employment, Leisure. And when we start talking to people, I kind of go through that matrix. Family, you can't really choose your family other than your husband or your wife, right? Education and employment sometimes is geographical based. Not everybody can work for Tesla or a tech community and not, vice versa. But leisure activities, I don't care if you're in prison, what you want to do in your free time, what you would dream about doing in your free time, or what you do in your free time is a rich topic of conversation. So for instance, if I said, Chad, in a perfect world, you've got a weekend free and you can do whatever you want. What do you like to do in that free time?
I love going hiking and reading
Okay. What kind of books do you like to read?
nonfiction.
Okay. What type, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. Primarily psychology and
Okay.
social
Like
science.
who's your favorite? Who would you say your favorite author is?
Like I love Malcolm Gladwell, Adam
Yeah.
Grant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to come up with so many.
No, it's perfect. So like whether we're, talking to strangers or whether I bring an Adam Grant book into it, I've got talking points there, right? And then I could flip it to hiking. Like what's your favorite trail that you went on? And then you're like, "Oh, I did a 50-miler here." And I'm like, "Oh, dude." And then I could say, "Look, I may not have any hiking experience. I may not have read the same people you've read. But if I said, Chad, what is it about hiking that you enjoy so much?"
Yeah. Well, I feel connected to feel connected to nature. And I love that feeling of, a lot of times like I'm in buildings and then getting out in nature, I feel like connected to the universe, and some of it is like the sounds and the smells are different.
Yeah. What was your favorite moment ever hiking?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that question.
I know. I'm turning the table on you.
Yeah, that's really good, Brad. I don't know. I mean, that I will have to think about that.
But let's say, here's the thing. If I could see your face, for the listeners, if they could see your face right now, right? You're bathing in dopamine.
Yes.
No cortisol, no stress hormone right now. Oxytocin, dopamine, all these wonderful neurochemicals because you're talking about something you love. If I would then let you teach me about it, like, so how do you get this? Or how do you do that? Or what would you recommend for food and a pack? And what kind of shoes would you recommend? You're not teaching me. And you're not thinking about, oh, he's going to ask me about this. He's asking me about that. He's going to interrogate me, right? You're connecting with me and you're associating that dopamine hit with me. I'm the social media reel right now, and you're just letting it roll, and you're associating me with that. So when we talk about asking better questions, that's what I mean. Open-ended, let them bathe. Don't make it about you. It's about them. But I know you've had Robin Dreek on here before. He's got an amazing book. It's not about me. All right. And that's what he would do as a spy recruiter. It's not about me. It's about them. What are their pain points, right? And that's what I try to do with people is early on, it's all about them. I need access to their mind. I need access to their heart. I need to find out what their tribe is, what their addiction is, not necessarily in a bad way, but where do they put their priorities in life? Because I may be going back there later on in the conversation.
So would you go to leisure right away with a lot of these people or no?
Probably not, just because it would be, if I have a limited amount of time, maybe. But think of it this way: if I just get on the plane with you, and we don't have conversations on planes anymore, right? Because we got the infotainment system. Everybody's got their AirPods. We make sure to put our AirPods so I don't have to talk to this person, especially on long flights, right?
Yeah.
If we know we have a short flight and it's going to be a quick up and down, people are a little less likely. Maybe they don't have the infotainment, system. But we're always so worried right now about doing that. So I think if you were going to have 30 minutes to talk with somebody, I probably wouldn't lead off with leisure. I would lead off with, why are you on this flight, right? Like at work, if it's a Friday and it's somebody I'm just meeting at work, I'm going to be talking about, what are you going to do this weekend? If it's a Monday, what did you do this week? If it's Wednesday, it's, hey, have you gotten yourself into any interesting projects? So it's literally, for people that have conversations at work, it may be day specific as far as what would be a good entry point to talk about. But I truly think like some of the best friends I've ever had, I'm talking fishing, hunting, boating, leisure activities. And that's what is bringing people together. Here in South Carolina, football's big. So everybody's always talking SEC football, right? Leisure activities, going to barbecue. What are you making on the big green egg this weekend? So spend time in them and let them talk about it. So when I talk about communication, Chad, I talk about, and it goes into detection and deception. When somebody's allowing, if you're worried that they may lie to you, it's the dog off the leash. The dog off the leash can go wherever it wants to go, right? The problem is it can go wherever it wants to go. And we all, if we have a dog, we understand what this is. They may scent another dog and they take off this way. They've got to mark their territory. So they pee here, whatever. That's a lot of times when somebody may omit information that you need. So that's where I need to put the dog on the leash. And I need to ask the dog yes and no questions, because when we truly want to detect deception, We got to put the dog on the leash and we got to ask yes or no questions.
So can we do a little role play where you do that?
Sure. What would you like to, where do we think you're lying at? So let me put it this way. Let's say we think that you potentially were involved in a shooting, okay? And maybe an informant came forward and said that you went to John's house and picked up the gun, okay? So I need to find out what you did that entire day, okay? So you obviously don't want to tell me you went to John's, and you don't want to tell me you went to 47th Street after that where the shooting happened. So I may say, hey, Chad, just want to talk to you a little bit about this situation. I always refer to it as a situation. Can you walk me through your day real quick, if you don't mind, like what you did on Saturday?
Yeah. Sure, Brad. I just well, let's see. I woke up around, I don't know, like mid-morning. I had a late night, and then I was like cleaning up the kitchen. The kitchen was dirty. Then I was watching a little TV. Ran out to do an errand. Afternoon, actually a couple errands. Afternoon kind of got away from me.
Yeah. When you say errands, just so I'm clear, what do you mean by errands?
Yeah, I went to the grocery store. I had to go to the dry cleaner.
Okay. Which do you usually go to Publix, or where did you go this time?
Yeah. We have King Supers. So I went to King
King's?
Supers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you getting something to cook that night?
Yeah. I was getting steak and potatoes
Oh, really?
and corn.
What kind of steak did you get?
I got a tri-tip.
Nice. Did you barbecue it or grill it?
I grilled it.
What kind of grill you got?
Yeah.
You're falling apart here, right? So well, here's the thing, right? If I just ask you, in that sense, that can be very effective, right? Because if I just ask you, did you go to John's house? I'm putting the spotlight on you. You're going to give me a yes or no. I may see delay, equivocation. You may confront me for asking. There's a number of things that I go through that can help in detection of deception. But you weren't expecting me to ask about your alibi, right? And the whole time, you know what you did. You know you went to John's, maybe you played some video games, whatever, but you know you went to John's, you know you got a gun, and you know you went to 47th Street and used it. The problem is that you don't know if I know that. You don't know if I have evidence associated with that. So you're constantly evaluating me like, did I say the right thing? And then as I ask these follow-up questions, like, damn, I didn't think that one through. He's going to ask about the tri-tip. He's going to ask about grilling. He's going to ask about the supermarket. Oh, there's videotape at the supermarket. Shoot. Then he's going to ask me about the dry cleaner. Oh my God, there'll be receipts. And then that cognitive load really starts building up and the wheels kind of come off. And in a lot of the cases that I've dealt with, let's say, for instance, I was dealing with a shooting here in South Carolina. Sadly, a 10-year-old got killed. And I do several behavioral analysis questions where I ask a question like, hey, can you give me 3 reasons why you think this shooting may have taken place? And the subject said, I don't know, maybe disrespect, maybe they were afraid. I don't know, maybe they were just showing off their guns and something kicked off. Well, it's a heuristic, it's an anchoring, it's a kind of a tweak in how the brain works, is that many times when we're asked that question, we actually provide the reasons why we did that crime. And that's actually the reasons why he committed the shooting. And then I asked, hey, what do you think should happen to somebody that shoots somebody? Well, the trick there is they many, many times say what they want to happen to them metaphorically. So he said, I don't know, everybody deserves a second chance. Well, who in their right mind when a 10-year-old is killed would say everybody deserves a second chance? And then lastly, I asked, hey, John, look, the ATF, they have these amazing, what's basically called gunshot residue tests, where they can go back and wipe someone's hand and see if there's gunshot residue on their hands. So the shooting had happened the day before that I'm talking to this subject. And I said, dude, it doesn't matter if they wiped their hands down, if they cleaned them, it's still going to show the gunshot residue. Is there any reason why, if they conducted those tests on you, that they would see gunshot residue? Oh, you know what? Yeah, a couple of days ago, I did go shoot. And then we have the problem that was just kind of unraveled with your story. Well, where was that at? Oh, it was somewhere in the county. Well, who was it with? I can't really remember. Well, what did you shoot? I know it was a big, long black gun. Things in which 48 hours prior, you would definitely remember because he wasn't prepared to tell that story. And so many, many times that's what we want to do, is create an opportunity to where I don't get the rehearsed alibi. I get the impromptu. And this leads us back to where we first started, improv.
Yeah.
Some people are good at improv. Some people in the moment are very, very bad at improv. In today's society, there's so many cameras, there's so many things out there that investigatively I can subpoena and look at to prove that what you just told me is not the case. Now I have a provable lie to where even if you didn't confess, I have information I can use in court, providing to a jury to say, look, He lied about this, 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 this. Why did Chad choose to do that? Why did Chad say he got a tri-tip? He
Yeah.
didn't go to King's. Okay, why do you say that? Right?
And as like you talked about the improv piece, as they are more and more unsure about getting caught, does their anxiety, their anxiety go up and it makes it harder for them to?
Yeah, and that can work in both ways. So we have to be careful because there's something called the Othello effect. And what the Othello effect is let's say I don't feel as if you believe me.
Yeah.
My anxiety goes up. So I'll give you, for instance, my wife and I bought a new car. And about 3 days after she bought the car, she called me at work and I was an agent, Secret Service agent. She said, whose female sunglasses are under the right front seat of the car? Now I couldn't see her expression, but I seen her expression. I would have known, woo. But just with her voice, I had no idea. And then I said, I don't know, call John at the dealership. I bet you somebody left it during a test drive. And here's what she says back with no pause. Whose female sunglasses that are not mine are under the right front seat of our new car? And it was said just like that, long pause. Now, here's the thing. I have nothing to hide, but I also know I have no idea whose sunglasses those are. And I don't know how I'm going to prove that I don't know whose sunglasses they are. So what do you think happened to my voice? It became very high. I probably got a sweat. If you looked at me, all the traditional things that would say, is this piece being honest? They'd say, oh no, he's a lying, you know what? About 15 minutes later, the neighbor came over, knocked on the door and said to my wife, hey, did I leave my sunglasses in the car when you drove me around in the new car yesterday? Right? I've got no guilty conscience, but that was good for me. Okay. Because I don't know how I would approve my innocence. So we have to be careful with that, is that spotlight works both ways. And that can lead to confirmation bias. And as we saw in the Amanda Knox case, when law enforcement makes a first impression, or you make a bad first impression, it is really hard to not fall victim to confirmation bias. So that's problematic. I worked a biker case, Chad, in which a 1%er, which if your listeners that don't keep up on, maybe you've probably seen Sons of Anarchy. A 1%er is, if it, it's an interesting about outlaw biker gangs where obviously a fictional depiction. I didn't know a lot about biker gangs when I did this case, but a female went missing. And the suspects were friends. One was a 1%er, meaning I think this term was coined in the 50s where 99% of bikers are good people, but the 1% go out there and commit crimes and so on and so forth. And the ATF agent said, this is a bad guy. It's very likely he's killed a couple people. And then we had a hang around, which wasn't even a prospect. So a hang around is just, he hangs around the club and just does activities, hoping that someday he can become a member. And he might have been 5'6", 140 pounds, dripping wet. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to polygraph that guy first, because chances are, and that was the working theory, that he might have seen the criminal activity, but there's no way he could have committed it. So I did a polygraph, and the question was about participating in her disappearance. He failed. So I viewed participating as he must have participated after the fact. He must have helped. Maybe he helped clean up a mess, whatever the case may be. And for about 3 hours, I was interrogating, and he kept saying, that's not it. Brad, that's not it. He wasn't saying he didn't do it, but my blinders were on, looking at things a certain way. Luckily, an eagle-eyed detective who had no affiliation with the case was watching, and she goes, that's not it. Why is he saying that? She knocked on the door. She came in, and she said, Brad, do you mind if I talk to him for a minute? You got to let your ego step aside. And she said, let's just say his name is John. John, you keep saying that's not it. What is it? And he goes, I killed her, cut her up in 6 pieces, and threw her in the river. And it was just like that, mic drop. She got what she needed, and that was it, because she asked the right question. And she wasn't blinded by confirmation bias on this person's not capable of that. It's got to be this person. And in law enforcement with Amanda Knox, that's what happened with the Italian authorities, is the roommate's dead and she's acting affectionate with her boyfriend. Well, she must have done it. No, she's in a foreign country. She's trying to, have a soothing behavior because she's nervous. But we're humans and we fall victim to that. So understand that confirmation bias can be very, very bad, because if somebody makes a good first impression on us, they can take advantage of us. And if they make a bad first impression on us, we hold it against them sometimes, unfortunately.
So how do you prevent against that?
So I'm really careful about, one, when my former life, when I was a polygraph examiner, when I would come in with the detectives, I wouldn't ask them, what do you think? Or who did it, right? We can say what we want about polygraph, but if I have something that's 85% effective, I'm going to take that over basically a coin flip.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there may be evidence that's increasing that number. So I'm going to be very careful about that. Plus, I'm going to take a step back. And the peace model, which is a model that the British, the Australians, and some European countries do, is they kind of build this into their interview model where they have almost outsiders in the case that will look at holistically and not be subject to that potential bias. So that's something that can be very, very helpful, is challenge and interrogate those assumptions. Just like you would interrogate someone else, interrogate your own assumptions and say, is it possible? And I've caught myself doing that before, where I was locked in on something and I was like, is it possible? So then it almost forces you to kind of back up a little bit and get a little bit better focus. But it's a thing where you can try your best to stop it, but we do it every day. I mean, you truly, in every aspect of your life, you're subject to these biases, and they're just mental shortcuts, right? But when it comes to big decisions that you're going to make, and this could be, once again, going to the car dealership, sleep on it. Okay. Walk out of the dealership and sleep on it. Anytime someone is trying to force you to do something quickly, that is many times where the mistake is made.
Yeah, slowing down.
Slow down.
Man, there's just so much I want to ask you. So you with the polygraph, you were doing credibility assessments,
Mhm.
right? And then also you've been teaching for many years people elicitation techniques through polygraph. Can you talk a little bit about like exactly what does it mean, credibility assessment?
Yeah, so credibility assessment is, not just polygraph, but it's the spoken word, it's body language. And body language traditionally is more about reception of message versus detection of deception. But that's also important, because if I see your heads nodding along as we're talking, I see you're tracking. If I see you stop nodding and give me a little furrowed brow, I think he didn't just understand, or he didn't agree with what I just said. If you're leaned back and you got your arms crossed, you're not really buying what I said. But if I say something and your eyebrows pop up and you lean forward, I'm going to rinse and repeat and do that. So credibility assessment can be when somebody provides me a written statement. It can be the spoken word. It can be their body language. And then a lot of times it's going to be obviously their physiology in the form of a polygraph, which you see the components are behind me right now in this picture, but the pneumograph tubes, the cardio cuff, and the galvanic skin plates, they're going to look at sweat gland activity. So by doing a good pretest, by understanding and getting the right questions, by having that person in the right frame of mind, and being very selective about the cases that we would do it in, we enhance our ability to get effective results, both in applicants, because we want to make sure that people standing next to the president with a loaded firearm are vetted. But then where I would do a lot of my examinations would be to give back to the local community because of what they do for us. We couldn't, in my former career, the Secret Service, we couldn't function without local and state law enforcement. And so as a force multiplier, we would assist them in their child sexual assault cases and their homicides and come in and assist. And that's where most of my trigger time with criminal cases came from. And that's where I learned a lot of lessons and thankfully got some good results as well. But you look at elicitation, Chad, just to kind of go there. The way I look at it is this. We try to be someone's buddy, and the acronym, and I'll lay it out to you here in a minute. But it's like this. Let me ask you a question. What do you think should happen to a guy that is a World War I veteran? He's awarded with medals in World War I. He is very introverted, but he kind of gets into politics in the 1930s. He takes over his military juggernaut in the 1940s. His actions lead to the burning deaths of over 1 million civilians. Okay. Obviously, I don't even need to really show you the face of this person to know who I'm talking about, right? From a punishment standpoint, what should happen to this person?
Oof, man, they're either death or life in prison with no parole.
But Chad, if I say to you that was Harry S. Truman, what would you say?
That's not who I picture.
I know, right? It's context, right? So, and the reason I point this out is, let's say I was interrogating Harry S. Truman. I would be his buddy. I would blame, and that's the B, I would blame the Japanese for doing what they did on December 7th. I would understand why he firebombed and why he dropped atomic weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because of what happened at Peleliu and Saigon and Saipan and Iwo Jima, because we saw all those deaths and we had to end this. And the Russians were quickly coming down down into China. They were going to take over territory. We had to, let them know that we've got this. And I would diminish impact because I would say, look, yes, 600,000 people died, but millions would have died if we had to invade mainland demand. And then I would demonstrate with analogies and metaphors and say, look, you were in the big war. You were in the World War. These things happen, but they have to end. And we were in a storm, and you made a decision that I can end this. And then the why, I would focus on the why and not the what. And in this, once again, it's about ending this, okay? Is that you made a hard choice, but you chose to end this. You chose peace. And you had harnessed the power of the sun, Harry. And what did you do? You didn't try more world domination. You rebuilt the world. That's how you would interrogate Harry S. Truman for dropping an atomic weapon on another country. right? So you would do that if you were talking to one of your friends and one of your friends had just got out of a nasty breakout. What would you do? You'd blame the other person for what they did. You'd understand why they feel this way. You would diminish impact by saying there's other fish in the sea. You'd be their buddy. And that's what we do is we try to be their buddy. We try to allow people to have a golden bridge and not feel as if they're despair, they're despondent, as if they have no other options. We give them an opportunity to have a off-ramp to talk to us.
How do, like, you talk about playing a role, how did you um do that and then like leave that behind? So you didn't like take it into your personal life or, just
You
carry
can't.
it with you.
You can't. And that's the problem. It messed me up. I'll be honest with you, Chad. I needed a break. So from going from 2 or 3 of these exams a week when I was in St. Louis, when I came to Fort Jackson, where the federal polygraph school is, that was great for me because I could go to 1 a week and then I could teach. So I could teach and do. And then that's when I came into jiu-jitsu. And that's when I met an amazing PhD by the name of Stacy Chakat. And she is with the Washington Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And she taught me how to regulate those types of things where I would never write my report at home, especially the ones involving crimes against children, because I've just rationalized with a pedophile, right? So I would never write my report at home. I would always do a jiu-jitsu session. When I came directly home from the police department, it was usually late at night, and I would play a game of Risk on my phone or checkers or chess, depending on how much time I had to get my mind. So when I crossed the threshold into my house, I wasn't thinking about that bad thing because you can have cognitive dissonance between the person you're portraying in the room to help achieve an outcome. And not bringing that home is very difficult. And I never looked at the child sexual abuse material. I would never look at the images because there's no reason for that. But the investigators that have to do that, it's even tenfold what I had to go through. So having someone there that can assess them and there's certain things that they do to try to mitigate that is very, very tough for law enforcement. And many people have suffered. And sadly, it's led to some suicides in this arena because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like creating some rituals and boundaries are critical.
100%. Boundaries, especially, and rituals as well. But I definitely would separate work and home as much as possible. And I think not looking at the images was very, very helpful because an image is just seared into your soul. Talking about something, you're playing a part. That's one thing, but to see the images is very difficult. So luckily, there's some good forensic tools out there now that are assisting investigators where they don't have to look at all the images, but they haven't completely stopped that process, unfortunately.
And is it more common nowadays for law enforcement to have therapeutic assistance doing therapy or?
Yeah, definitely. If we've identified the issue, I know right when I was leaving Secret Service, we would mandate, annual check-ins for people that were working these cases. And then many of the Internet Crimes Against Children task forces will actually either do quarterly or kind of on demand whenever that you feel like you need to talk to somebody. They would also have great things like they had like a therapeutic pony and a therapeutic dog that, if you're my friends over in Australia, Task Force Argos, amazing in this space, in this child advocacy kind of child sexual abuse space, is that they had dogs that were actually like therapy dogs that, were in the bay with the detectives. And, there's nothing like after working some of this stuff to just go pet a dog, pet a donkey. Sometimes that can be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Pets are great.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah. Well, Brad, as we're coming up on time, I'll ask you like any closing thoughts. Where can people find you and your work and how you want to bring this to a close?
No, I appreciate the opportunity for me to get out there, and I've been blessed, with the Secret Service to be able to kind of put some of this stuff down on paper. And I presented this to an editor as kind of a law enforcement book, and the editor hit me early on, and she says, "Man, this is a communication book. This is not a law enforcement book." So I kind of broadened the scope on it. And book's called Tell Me Everything. I was blessed to get it through Matt Holt Books, and it's going to be distributed by Simon & Schuster February of next year. So this is a long process, but anybody that wants to connect with me can definitely catch me on Instagram. It's Brad Beeler 1865. That's the year the Secret Service was founded. Also LinkedIn with the same moniker there. So I love the engage in discussions. And if I can help people, I love to be able to help them anyway when it comes to communication or these types of cases as an investigation standpoint. I'm a big believer in helping those that can't help themselves. In the Secret Service, we protect people and we give them 24 hours, 365 days a year protection. Kids cannot have that. They can't choose the environment that they're born into. So it's been kind of a labor of love for me to be able to hopefully throw some stuff out there into the world where if some other investigators can pick up on it, they can help their own community.
Yeah, well, thank you for your career of service, your life of service, and your colleagues as well, because we're better because of you guys. That's for sure.
Thank you very much, Chad. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you liked it, please share with a friend on social media. That goes a long way to promoting this podcast so I can continue to interview and share these conversations with fascinating people. You can follow me on social media, Chad Stoloff, and visit my website, chadstoloff.wordpress.com, for more information. I'd love it if you would leave a review to support the podcast. Thanks so much. Until next time.